And joining me, professor at Hofstra University School of Law, James Sample, and U.S. Special Envoy for Iran under President Biden, Robert Malley. David French is still here with us. James, I'll start with you. Are we facing a major stress test on our democracy tonight?
The answer to that, Antonia, is absolutely yes. No matter what happens tonight, I mean, there's a certain cliffhanger-like quality to what is going to happen or not happen tonight. But let's be clear, the words have already damaged American standing in the world. You know, let's speak directly to Republicans and to those who would view Ronald Reagan as the paragon. Ronald Reagan famously brought back the phrase, originally attributed to the Puritans, that America is a shining city on a hill. No matter what happens tonight, the president's the rhetoric is more than rhetoric. When you threaten the destruction of a whole civilization, that meets the definition, not my definition, the Pentagon's definition of terrorism.
David, I'm curious what you think, what kind of position you think this is putting service members in and military lawyers. I had a conversation earlier in the last hour with a general about the position that they've been placed in. And he, of course, has faith in our troops, in leaders beneath Hegseth. But part of the problem seems to be here that if the president has announced and telegraphed war crimes, what experts already believe are war crimes, will that not basically put us in the position where no matter what they do tonight, even if it's more limited than what the president has described, whether it's international courts, whoever it may be, they will read those actions through the lens, through the words that the president preceded them with?
Well, let's be super clear here. If the actual orders are to destroy the desalination plants, to destroy all of the power plants in the country, those are absolutely unlawful orders on their face. And there is a legal obligation by members of the military, a legal obligation to defy those orders. Now, if you think this through, it starts to get extraordinarily dangerous and frankly, pretty scary, because previously in American military history, there have been clearly unlawful orders given, but a service member has always had the option of appealing above their commander to somebody else who can potentially introduce sanity into the situation. But when the source is from the commander-in-chief to deliver the orders, who delivers the unlawful orders, that creates the possibility of the gravest constitutional crisis since 1861 if the military now defies the commander-in-chief. That's why we have a Congress, by the way. A Congress is supposed to step in here right now. This is why we have a 25th Amendment. They're supposed to step in right now. Now, if Trump doesn't follow through, he tacos, and instead of bombing all of the desalination plants or taking on civilian infrastructure generally, attacks those infrastructure targets that are lawful, because there would be some that are lawful, depending on their military usage. And that's all he does. Well, then there hasn't been a war crime committed by the military. The commander-in-chief, Trump, has still, I would say, violated the laws of war by making the threat. But if the actual attacks in isolation comply with the laws of war, the service members who carry them out are not in violation of the law. I think the president already is. I think the president already has violated the laws of war, international law, domestic law by issuing a threat of essentially a crime against humanity. And I think there is a responsibility for the political branches to act. And I just say that knowing and expecting that they won't. I mean, we've seen this movie before, after January 6th, for example, and we know how the Republicans respond to Trump. But let's be very clear. His threat all by itself, even if he bluffs, this threat is entirely beyond the pale and requires, in a country with integrity and courage, requires a decisive political response.
Robert, Trump said yesterday that the real war crime here would be allowing Iran to have nuclear weapons. I want you to take a listen to some of his remarks.
I terminated Barack Hussein Obama's Iran nuclear deal, a disaster. They laughed at our president and went on with their mission to have a nuclear bomb. His Iran deal would have led to a colossal arsenal of massive nuclear weapons for Iran. And They would have had them years ago, and they would have used them. Would have been a different world. There would have been no Middle East and no Israel right now, in my opinion, the opinion of a lot of great experts.
Rob, you were the lead negotiator on that 2015 JCPOA deal. So can you fact check the president there for us?
So I was a lead negotiator. There were many others who were Secretary Kerry, Wendy Sherman. But listen, first I want to really echo what David French said and Professor Sample. I mean, regardless of what the president does, this has crossed a threshold that is really completely unacceptable. And let's not forget, it's at the same time that Vice President Vance has said that America's military objectives vis-a-vis Iran has fundamentally been achieved. So the only point of this would be because the president is unsatisfied, is frustrated that Iran has not capitulated. Now, to the point about the nuclear threat, there's no doubt. I think this, and nobody can really dispute the fact that Iran's nuclear program was more advanced after President Trump tore up the deal that was negotiated under President Obama in 2015, and that it continued to present a greater threat after the military campaign that was launched last year. So whatever he may think about the nuclear deal, it was a better instrument for containing Iran's nuclear program for a longer period of time than any of the two other steps that the president took. And it is pretty rare in history to have counterfactuals in real life, in real time. We saw the results of the deal. We saw the results of the sanctions and maximum pressure. And we saw the results of a military strike. Of those three, I think it is incontrovertible that the most effective of all was diplomacy.
James, Politico reports that the Pentagon is expanding this list for what might be hit tonight to include civilian and military sites. And I know that there are civilian sites that can be fair game, but there's supposed to be very careful processes involved. And the military strategic benefits are supposed to far exceed whatever kind of harm should be done to civilians. At least that is my non-expert understanding of the dynamics there. Please correct me if I'm wrong. You know, these are tactics that we have seen used by others, including Israel. But does that make it valid? Just because it's maybe becoming more common, because we don't see the international community able to hold countries accountable. Does that make it okay?
Your expert analysis is on target, as always, Antonia, which is to say the so-called dual-use workaround. It does exist. The idea that if a particular piece of infrastructure serves a dual use, both civilian use and military use, then what is supposed to happen, legally speaking, is there is supposed to be a target-by-target proportionality analysis. Now, if the military objectives far outweigh any civilian downside to the infrastructure that is targeted, then that is considered legal. But what you cannot do, and what this administration has done in all sorts of contexts, is just use labels, just use words, rhetoric, to put a label on and say dual use as a retrofitted, backwards-looking workaround to label something dual purpose when you never actually engaged in the proportionality analysis that the law requires. So to your question, just because others have done it, we don't accept that kind of reasoning from our children, much less from our presidents.
And it helps to remember, too, for Americans who may not be very familiar with the dynamics of any war, that there are Americans who live very close to military sites and bases who have no connection to the military whatsoever. Many of the highways that we all use to get to work or to see family members on a daily basis, the military also uses. So when you hear that sites are used by both the military and civilians, understand that that's not something that just is the case in Iran and with a regime like Iran's. That's the case on U.S. soil as well. James Sample, Robert Malley, and David French, good to see all of you, and thank you so much.